Welcome to another edition of Unconventional Playbook. I'm bringing in my big bro to talk a little bit of Minnesota Vikings football, the state of the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of stuff has been going on the past, week with the Minnesota Vikings. JJ McCarthy being out, the injury report, the first two games of the Minnesota Vikings season. So I thought me and my big bro text back and forth, talked a lot about the Minnesota Vikings. So I said, hey, man, you got to come on the podcast. On the podcast right now is my big bro, Greg Jones. What's going on, man?
Man, how you doing, Lionel? Everything's going okay, man. I feel blessed that you had me on Unconventional Playbook, and let's get into it.
Let's do it, man. Listen, the Minnesota Vikings, during the offseason, Greg, all of this, there was a lot of hype, let me say. A lot of hype about the Minnesota Vikings, the defensive line, offensive line, and well-deserved, man. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah did a really, really good job, signing a lot of really, really good free agents. I thought they had a pretty decent draft. I think everybody was looking forward to the Minnesota Vikings. After two games, the Chicago Bears game, it was 3 quarters of just really, really bad football. And then JJ McCarthy, that fourth quarter, did his thing. And then last week, really against the Atlanta Falcons, it was just really 4 quarters of bad football. On the offensive side of the ball, JJ McCarthy looked a little bit overwhelmed. The offense wasn't efficient. We really couldn't get the running game going. The offensive line didn't play very well. When you look at everything, man, the offseason, you're going to the first 2 games of the season, give me your off-the-cuff thoughts about what's going on with the Minnesota Vikings and just your thought about the team in general right now.
Well, man, my honest opinion is I wouldn't panic right now. I wouldn't panic right now, Unconventional Playbook Nation, Minnesota Vikings Nation. I wouldn't panic right now. A lot of this just boils down to timing with these guys, the lack of work in preseason, and you have to look at JJ. You kind of have to give him a break right now because the kid hadn't played actual 4 quarters of football since 2023. So, he's shaking off some rust. He didn't really play in the preseason. 2 snaps in 1 preseason game, and again, he's out. He's just lacking a little bit of timing with Justin Jefferson. He's going to have to build up that rapport with Addison when he gets back. The only receiver he probably had any type of chemistry with right now is probably Adam Thielen because they worked out in the summertime. But other than that, I don't think it's time to panic. I think the Vikings are going to pull it together. A lot of these things, especially with the offensive line, they have to gel. You have to gel because you don't get preseason work in the past couple of years. So that kind of hurts different teams, some NFL teams. They can pop out of it real quick. But with the Vikings, it's just going to take a little bit of time. I don't think they're going to win 14 games. But, they're going to get at least 12, I believe. I believe they're going to get 12 once JJ gets rolling and he builds up the chemistry with his wide receivers and just get some play time under his belt.
See, I like what you just brought up here because I've been saying that on the podcast previously, Greg, and I think this type of stuff flies under the radar. When you are a casual fan and you don't coach, you really don't understand the dynamics of reps versus real reps. And I think when you bring up JJ McCarthy, and it's not only JJ McCarthy, Greg, it's the offensive line. It's right. All these dudes that sit out and don't get those real bullet reps during the preseason. I made a case where people were like, you hear all these coaches talking about the benefits of joint practices. I'm not saying that there is no benefit in joint practices. I went to the Minnesota Vikings joint practice this year, and JJ McCarthy got about 60 to 70 reps in that joint practice. But guess what? All of those reps were kind of scripted. The coaches got together and said, hey, this is what I want to see during the joint practice. If you guys could do this during the joint practice. A lot of people don't understand that. When you go to preseason games, not only is it a mental prep for the quarterback, because I think JJ McCarthy needs to know what it feels like to get out of bed in the morning and have a game at noon going into
Right.
US Bank Stadium. Also, Greg, on the road, man, when they went to the Titans, it would have been great for him to get out of bed at his hotel, travel to the game, learn the mental makeup of how to prepare for a road game. Those things are beneficial instead of having him start his first game at Soldier Field Monday night versus the
Yes.
Chicago Bears. Man, that's mental gymnastics for a first-year quarterback. So I think you're right. I like the way you put it when you talk about I don't think people should panic. I'm not panicking on JJ McCarthy because I knew this thing was going to be like a roller coaster ride, right?
Right.
And then
Exactly.
since he didn't get these reps, I know it's going to take him a while to get his footing. The game right now is really fast for him.
Yeah.
So there's a reason why Kevin O'Connell made him QB1. And I think you just got to give him the opportunity to be QB1. But now, big bro, he's injured. And so
Yeah.
you bring in a guy like Carson Wentz, and I can kind of sense the fear that people know Carson Wentz can ball a little bit. Like he's not
Yeah.
garbage. If Carson Wentz comes in, Greg, and plays really well, there is a slight chance that JJ McCarthy may not get this thing back anytime too soon.
Yeah, those are some variables, and I just kind of want to touch on what you were talking about as far as like the reps and stuff. There's no way, even if you have a joint practice, all that's well and fine, but there's no way a practice can emulate game speed. That's the whole thing. There's no way practice is going to emulate game speed. So the more game speed that JJ gets, the better he's going to get because he gets better. If you notice, even in the last two games, third and fourth quarter, he was a whole different quarterback. The game's starting to slow down to him, barring his injury. And I wouldn't really worry. And I think he's going to come back from that high ankle sprain a little bit earlier than what people, are saying, he's out for 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. A guy that age, how old is he? About 23 years old. He's going to
About
bounce back.
22, 23, yeah.
Yeah, he's going to bounce back from that pretty quick. He's going to bounce
Yeah,
back
but
from that pretty quick.
the conspiracy theorist is, and I know you like a good conspiracy. The conspiracy theorist is is that they are using this injury to kind of soft bench JJ McCarthy. Like, I don't know if that's the case, but I will say that if JJ McCarthy was lighting it up the first two games, I think you would hear some verbiage. Oh, we're gonna take this day by day and see where he is on Sunday. Kevin O'Connell came out and said on Monday that JJ's not playing on Sunday. Carson Wentz is going to get the reps to be the starting quarterback. What do you expect from Carson Wentz? And do you think there's anything in this where Kevin O'Connell is like, man, JJ's not ready, being that he's injured, let's go with Carson Wentz?
I don't really think so. I think Kevin McConnell has always been in JJ's corner, for the most part. Even with the Aaron Rodgers situation, I feel like,
Yeah.
kind of protecting him, protecting his mental status, coming into the season, worrying about getting his position taken, and so forth. But with Carson Wentz, I think you have a good solid number two quarterback because his first 3 or 4 years in the NFL, he was balling.
He
You
was
know,
balling.
yeah, he was
Yep.
balling. So you can. He has that ability. He has that ability to keep you afloat until JJ comes back. I don't think that he's going to hurt the team. You know what I'm saying? I think he's just going to get them through this rough patch, and that's what you want from your second string quarterback. So I don't think Vikings Nation that we have to really worry about anything. I think Carson Wentz is going to he's going to be okay.
Yeah, this is Unconventional Playbook. Big Bro is on with me. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Greg, listen, man, I think that on Sunday when Carson Wentz plays, I think at the end of that game on Sunday, I think it's going to look completely different. And this is not an indictment on JJ McCarthy at all. I just think Carson Wentz has a lot of experience. And I think sometimes in this league, fans, people that do podcasts, people that do media, they focus on short sample sizes. And I think when you look at Carson Wentz, man, he's got a lot of years in his league. So when he steps up to the line of scrimmage, he's going to be able to read defenses
Yeah.
better than JJ McCarthy, not because he's a better quarterback, but because he has that experience. So he's going to be able to audible out of stuff. He's going to be able to change plays at the line of scrimmage. He's
Right. Right.
already, Greg, he's already familiar with the playbook because he
Right.
played for the Rams, he played
Yeah.
for Kansas City. So everything is kind of similar. The verbiage may be a little bit different, but the concept and the plays are basically the same. So it's well within Carson Wentz's wheelhouse. This thing is going to look better on Sunday. And I think the fear for Vikings Nation, UP Nation, Purple Gang is that because it looks better in the short term, people are going to go towards Carson Wentz to kind of finish this thing out. Where I say, unless Carson Wentz is playing at an MVP level, when JJ McCarthy is ready to come back, I don't care what the stats are for Carson Wentz. I think you gotta put JJ back in there because it does the Minnesota Vikings and JJ McCarthy no good to have JJ McCarthy sitting on the bench. Do you kind of feel the same way, or do you differ on that?
Well, no, I kind of feel the same way because now I think too, that's not going to be a detriment. With JJ coming in and a guy like Carson Wentz, even on the injury aspect, he's going to be on the bench and he's going to be able to watch how Carson Wentz operates and how he's going to audible out of things. Looking at his check downs and things like that. So I think that's going to only be a plus. And just going back to O'Connell, I don't think JJ is going to lose his spot due to injury.
Yeah,
So I kind of feel
it
I kind of feel the same way you do on that.
Yeah, it really kind of depends. I have coached many teams. Obviously, I've never had the opportunity to coach at the pro level. But the one thing I know that Kevin O'Connell is going to be faced with, and here's what a lot of people aren't thinking about, is that locker room. And so right now, no matter what you think about JJ McCarthy, his potential, what he did in the first two games, whether you think he's a bust, whether you think he needs some time. I just know that out of 8 quarters that the Vikings have played with JJ McCarthy, 7 of them weren't very good. You had the
Right.
one quarter, the fourth quarter, which was good. And so the players know that, and the players see that. So now you bring in a guy like Carson Wentz, who's pretty respected around NFL circles. If he comes in and starts balling out and the team wins 2 or 3 games in a row, JJ McCarthy comes back healthy. It's like, how do you go back to JJ if you're KOC, knowing that your players in that locker room? Like, I look at a guy like Harrison Smith, Greg. He's got 1 year left. Like, Harrison Smith don't want to hear about potential and how good JJ McCarthy's going to be, 2 or 3 years from now. Harrison Smith is trying to win right now, even though he's not playing. Like, how do you make that transition back to JJ if our new Carson Wentz is playing well?
Well, the way I kind of look at it, that's why those guys get paid the big bucks, LJ. That's why what I'm saying? That's why we're sitting here going over all these scenarios. And I'll just give you a scenario, and this is all the way across the board. You know what I'm saying? We grew up in Ohio, with the Browns and whatnot. And sometimes when it comes to those type of situations, you get paid to make the hard decisions. For example, I just give you this example many years ago, for the New England Patriots. You had Drew Bledsoe, starting quarterback, was already proven. Drew Bledsoe
Yeah.
was proven. He got
Yep.
injured. Here comes Tom Brady. So now Tom Brady balled out. So now Drew Bledsoe was healthy. So the coach had to make that hard decision. Belichick made that decision with like, hey, I gotta roll with this other guy. I gotta roll with Tom Brady. And you see how that turned out. Sometimes you just have to make those you have to make those decisions.
Yeah, yeah. When I look at the Minnesota Vikings, Greg, I look at here's one thing that I always revisit in my mind after each game and after each season. Man, thank God for Brian Flores. Brian Flores is one of my favorite coaches in the league, and here's why. You can always tell a good coach. Brian Flores has a consistency at the level that his defense plays. Now he's not going to his defense is not going to play a perfect game. There have been some games where the defense hasn't played a good game. They haven't shown up, but you can count the amount of games that the defense hasn't shown up on one hand. Like it's
Right,
not very often.
right,
90% of the games that B Flow has been our defensive coordinator, the defense has shown up. And again, he does more with less than
right,
any coach
exactly.
I've ever seen. I mean, look at the defense he walked into and what he's built in 3 years. And now you could argue, Greg, that even in the last two games, he's had people out, he's had people injured, and yet the defense continues to keep them in games and give them opportunities to win. And I know with your eye on the defensive end, you
Mm,
always talk about how valuable it is for the defense to get a lot of rest. Like, the better your defense is, it's probably because the offense can sustain drives and give them a rest
right,
on the sideline so they can come back in. That
right,
hasn't really been the case with the Vikings this year, and their
right.
defense is still performing at an optimal level. What are your thoughts about Brian Flores and his defense and what he brings to the table?
Brian Flores to me is a genius. Just like you
Yeah,
said, he sometimes he gets depleted, especially his secondary, but you will really never know it. You will really never know it the way his defensive scheme is, the way he mixes up cover packages, back there. And if it wasn't for the defense most of the time, hell, I mean, it'll be a lost cause. But he provides a lot of pressure. And the thing about it is he has that buy-in. Guys like playing for him. Even with lesser talent, the guys like playing for him, and they are working hard for him back there. And I think that's one of the reasons why Harrison Smith didn't decide to retire because he likes
exactly.
playing for Flores.
Yep. Yep. When you look at the D, man, the thing that I love about his defense, which causes offenses a lot of problems, is everybody can blitz. From the defensive tackle, from the edge rushers, inside, outside linebackers, safeties, cornerback, and he has all of these guys playing close to the line, and anybody can drop out in coverage. Anybody can rush. Anybody can stunt. So, I mean, it is for a quarterback, man, that has got to be mental gymnastics. If you look over the course of the years of quarterbacks that have done well against Brian Flores' defense, it is always the veterans. It's guys that have been in the league 8 to 9 years that can audible out of things and, know where their check downs are, know where their hot reads are. You're not getting a whole lot of young quarterbacks that can beat Brian Flores. So, you know, I look at that situation and I think that if the Minnesota Vikings still, if the Minnesota Vikings have a chance to have a successful season, it's going to be riding on that defense until JJ McCarthy can kind of cut his teeth and get better.
Right. And even with that, you know what I'm saying? And I'm a firm believer, you know what I'm saying? You have to give those guys, especially a younger type of defense, you have to give those guys a chance to get some rest. You know what I'm saying? You just can't get in there in a situation, three and out, three and out, three and out. You have to sustain some type of, 5 to 6 minute drive, you know what I'm saying, where those guys can just come back refreshed in their defensive schemes.
Yeah, and I think that he is kind of, the crown jewel of the Minnesota Vikings coaching staff. I can honestly say that, I think the world of KOC. He's come in and won a lot of games in his first 3 years as Minnesota Vikings head coach. But when you look at Brian Flores, I think he's been more consistent with his job. Let me pick your brain. Let me pick your brain about this, because this is something that I've kind of been thinking about. I've been talking to a couple of people about this. I want to talk about Kwesi. A lot of people, I think Kwesi, for the most part, has done a really, really good job being the general manager for the Minnesota Vikings, but I think everybody's kind of criticized he hasn't had the best drafts. And I think, they've been able to hold that off because he's been really good in free agency. Like, he just signed a long-term contract to be here for a little bit. He's had two great free agency classes. But right now, looking at what's going on, I think he is directly tied to JJ McCarthy. So I think a lot of people, there are some fans, Greg, believe it or not, that think after 2 games, JJ McCarthy is a bust. So that's tied to Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. And then now you look at this free agency class in terms of the offensive line, like this was supposed to be the offensive line. They're not necessarily off to the best start. And then you look at the defensive line as well. Not that they have played bad, they haven't, but that interior with Allen and Hargrave, they haven't shown up like people have really thought that they should. Should Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah be nervous right now? So, I think there's a little possibility that he should be a little nervous. He should be a little concerned looking at JJ, looking at what's going on. I don't think there's a panic. Like, I don't think he's in jeopardy of losing his job anytime too soon. But should Kwesi be a little bit nervous with what's going on in the state of the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, my take on that, I would say not.
Yeah,
I would say not. And we keep talking about this. We keep beating a dead horse. These guys have to gel. It's only the second game. It's only the second game of the season. These guys haven't had a lot of play time, together. Now, if this was game 6, game 7,
yeah.
then there's room for concern. You know what I'm saying? And still, even with that, it's not panic time. You know what I'm saying? The Vikings are going to get stronger as the season wears on. Like I said, if it goes to game 6, game 7, and they're still struggling, then okay, then you may want to look at a couple of things. But other than that, I don't feel really and this is just me. I don't feel any panic, at all going forward. You know what I'm saying? With McCarthy, the defense, the offensive line, I just think that they have to gel due to the lack of time that they play together and simulated game speed. I just think next game after that, I think they're going to come out of it and you're going to see a different Vikings team and a different outcome.
Yeah, let me ask you this
Yeah.
before the show ends, and I specifically wrote this question down for you because I've been hearing that when JJ comes back, I think there are people trying to figure out what's a good game for JJ to come back. I think a lot of people have speculated that he's going to come back after the bye week. So it's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. It's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's going to be the Cleveland Browns. Those are their games, right? And then they have the bye week after that. And then they come back after the bye week against the Philadelphia Eagles. So a lot of people are saying, I don't know if we want to bring JJ McCarthy back against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then after that, we've got the Chargers or whoever it is, and then we got the Lions, and then we got the Rams. Like, my whole thing is this. If JJ McCarthy is that guy, and JJ McCarthy is your QB1, like, why are you trying to find certain games for him to come back in? Like, if he's the man, he's got to be the man no matter who they play. So once he gets healthy, I don't care who the defense coordinator is. I don't care who the team is. JJ McCarthy needs to be back out on the field. Like, am I wrong about that?
Well, no, you're not wrong about that. And first of all, what I'm saying, it's going to depend on a couple of things, because I think he's going to be back sooner than what the public thinks he will. So I think he's going to be back a little sooner than that, and it also is going to depend on how good Carson Wentz is going to play. You have those two
That's true.
variables. You have those two
Yep.
variables right there. So, but he's not going to be out the total 4 weeks, and I just believe that. I believe he's going to come back a little sooner. But like I said, even if he's ready to play, it's just going to depend on how well Carson Wentz is going to be doing in the offense.
Yep. Yep. 1,000%. 1,000% agree on that one. When you look at the game on Sunday, Greg, what do you expect to see from the Vikings and Cincinnati Bengals game, and who do you think wins that game?
Well, I think the Vikings are going to come out on top of that game right there. Cincinnati doesn't have much of an offensive line. That's going to feed right into B-Flow and his defense. So, and now you have Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's out, with that
Yep.
turf toe injury for 3 or 4 months. The reserve quarterback is decent for them, but I think
He beat
he's
us
not going.
before.
Yeah, yep, and that's true. But I still think the Vikings are going to come out on top. Uh, 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 I think the defense is probably going to slow the game down enough to help Carson Wentz get his feet under himself. And I see the Vikings case. It's not going to be a high scoring game, but I see the Vikings coming out on top.
Yes. Yep. I see the Vikings coming out on top as well. I think here's what you're going to see on Sunday in that game. I think you're going to see a great running game from the Minnesota Vikings. I would speculate, big bro, that this is probably going to be the best running game that the Vikings have had in a long time. Number one, they got Carson Wentz out there, who's only been with the team for 3 weeks. So I don't think KOC is going to overwhelm him with a lot of stuff and give him a whole lot of opportunities to throw the ball. Like, I don't see him throwing 30 or 40 passes in that game. I think they kind of want to limit the playbook a little bit. And I think now that Aaron Jones is put on IR, the right running back is going to get the reps in terms of Jordan Mason. I mean, that dude is a tank. He can get
Yeah,
downhill. He's going to give you those tough yards in between the tackles, and he's going to be good in the red zone. And then I think you're going to get Christian Darrisaw back at left tackle, which is going to help protect the quarterback spot. So I think when you start to put all those together, now you got a veteran quarterback in the backfield. I think this thing is
right.
going to look completely different.
Yeah,
I think B-Flow, to your point, I think B-Flow's defense is going to show up against that bad offensive line. I honestly think at US Bank Stadium, I think this is a double-digit win for the Minnesota Vikings. I think they win by more than 10. And I think out of the first 3 games, this is the best game that the Minnesota Vikings are going to play out of the 3 games that we've seen so far this year. And I think it's going to start to lend to the speculation, who should we start as quarterback? Does this thing look better under Carson Wentz or does it look better under JJ? So I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to do well on Sunday.
yeah.
Well,
I just
big
kind of
bro,
think,
thanks for go ahead.
but no, I just think too. O'Connell has built a culture in the Vikings where they don't like losing.
No,
The Vikings don't like losing. Period. So I think just going forward real quick, just like you said, I think the Vikings are going to show up. I don't think Cincinnati has enough juice in the tank right now to deal with the Vikings. The defense is going to come out with a chip on their shoulder, and they're going to play hard. Now, I'm not sure if Harrison Smith due to return for the Cincinnati game.
I think he's been limited in practice, Greg. So I thought he would have played a little bit against the Falcons. That didn't happen. So I'm not sure. They haven't said anything definitive yet about him
Okay,
playing.
okay, okay. Yeah, I know. I
Yeah, so
haven't heard anything.
yeah, that'll help if you have him back there, man. He's a coach on the field as well, knows the
Right.
defense really well. So that would make the Minnesota Vikings defense even better. I do think the loss of Blake Cashman is huge. He's the green
Yeah.
dot guy, inside linebacker. So he makes the Minnesota Vikings a little bit soft up the middle. But I do like Eric Wilson, man. I think whenever he comes in, he makes a lot of plays for the Vikings. I've been a little bit critical of Ivan Pace Jr. I think Ivan Pace Jr. is a really, really good linebacker. I just think at times he hurts the Vikings because he can't pass cover and he's small. So he's one of these ball hawk guys where he's going to put in 1,000% effort and be around the ball all the time, which is going to put him in position to make a lot of plays. I just think against really good, tough, really good offensive line teams, he always seems to have a little bit trouble, and I think that's because of his size. So I'm
Right,
right there
right,
with you, man. I think it's going to be, a situation where the Minnesota Vikings are definitely going to win this game.
right.
Well, big bro, thanks for joining Unconventional Playbook today, man. This can't be the only time that we have you on. So we're gonna have you back, you know, numerous times so we can digest the Minnesota Vikings and see what's going on. So thanks for coming on the show today.
All right, man. Thanks for having me, and everybody be blessed.
This is Unconventional Playbook. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Hopefully, the Minnesota Vikings can pull this thing out on Sunday. We've got the Unconventional Playbook preview show of that game. That's going to be coming up later on this week. But today, we were very honored and fortunate to have Big Bro Greg Jones on the show. And as always, UP Nation, we will see ya when we see ya. Skol.